Hello everybody, welcome to this Protection Insight podcast, and joining me today is Mark Godding from Aegon. He is the National Account Manager over there, and we're going to talk about how to write a personal protection policy with Aegon into an Aegon discretionary trust. So welcome to the podcast, Mark. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Vince. Very well.
Good. Well, to get started, and we're going to use the same case study that we've been running through with all these podcasts, we're going to complete the trust form, but I guess to start off with, Mark, we need to actually find it. So how do we actually locate the correct trust form for an Aegon personal protection policy?
You know, Vince, it's really easy. Just type Aegon discretionary trust form into Google and it will appear. There's also a link the advisor can use, and that will make absolutely sure you've got the right one.
And of course, this is available via the Aegon literature library that advisors use on the advisor site. So we've got the discretionary trust up on the screen, and you can see at the top there, this is for personal protection and whole of life. You've got these handy little navigation buttons at the top of the screen that allow you to print it off, or you can actually fast forward to the next page within the trust form. So if we scroll down to page 2, Mark, I can see here at the bottom of page 2, there's a content section. Do you want to just talk us through that, Mark?
Absolutely, Vince. I think the key area to remember is that Part A should be completed when the policy isn't yet in force. Part B is when there is an existing policy and it's being assigned into the trust. It's also worth mentioning that if this were a joint life first death policy, there's a survivorship clause included as standard in our discretionary trust. This means that any claims proceeds from the policy will be held for the surviving settler as long as they survive by 30 days.
So the really good thing about this trust, Mark, is the fact that it actually caters for most situations. So it could be single life policies, joint life policies, and it's all on the same trust form. The fact that there's 14 pages, you don't need to stress too much about that because, as you say, Part A is all about brand new policies that are in the process of being set up. Part B is where we need to focus on because that's existing policies that are already in force. So as we move down the page, Mark, to page 3, we can see there, and we'll come back to this a bit later, what to do with the trust form when we've completed it. So that's an important section to pay attention to. And if we go to page 4, this is the start of the trust form as far as brand new applications are concerned. That won't affect this because we've got a policy that's already in force. So if we move down to page 5, obviously you can see there where the trustees get picked up, and page 6 is the attestation, which we're talking about there is signatures. And if we move down to page 7, assigning an existing protection policy into trust. So just talk me through anything I need to pay attention to here, Mark.
I think the most important thing here is that there are several options on the form as to where to send the trust to. The most secure route is using our online form. So that's you type in the web address, you go there and you submit it using that. And the important point to remember is that it is secure. Alternatively, you can attach it to an email and send it to the address, or alternatively again, print it off and post it to us.
And it does say there, Mark, that please send us a copy of the completed form, so not the original, send a copy in, and there's 3 different routes there to send the trust form in. So I think what we'll do, Mark, is we'll get started on completing the trust form. So we'll move down to page 8. This is the declaration of trust, and it says there that you are the settlers. So presumably, Mark, that's plural, that's more than one settler, as you mentioned before. What do we need to enter in this box here? I, we, of.
Right. Well, the trust, as you can see, it caters for both. So it caters for single life policies, it caters for joint life policies. In this instance, we've just got a single life policy. So it would be I, John Smith, of, and then you'd put in John Smith's address.
Okay. And if we move down there, it says, and I just thought this might be confusing for advisors, so it'd be good to clear this up. It says, insert the Scottish Equitable PLC policy number. Now, if I've sold an Aegon policy and that's already in force, do I put that number in there?
Actually, we do see the odd query about this. Our trading name in the UK is Aegon, but our actual registered name for contracts and trusts is Scottish Equitable PLC. So the policy number, which will have been supplied when the case was submitted and in the documentation afterwards, it always starts with an L and then there's usually 019 after that. That's the policy number you would put in there.
Okay. And then in the next section there, it says insert policy start dates. And this trust should be signed after the policy is started. So this policy is already in force. So presumably I just need to put the start commencement date of the protection policy.
It's as simple as that. You can see there's an additional box which, if, for example, there is another policy with Aegon you'd like to assign into the trust, it will cater for more than one policy as well.
Okay, so we'll put the start date in there of the protection policy. And then at the bottom of page 8, we've actually got the appointment of additional trustees. Now it says there, Mark, you as the settler or settlers are automatically a trustee of the trust, so there's no need to fill your details in here. Insert the full names and addresses of your additional trustees. We recommend that you name at least 2 trustees. A trustee must be over the age of 18. Now I've actually got 3 trustees for this case study, but can we get away with just 1 additional trustee?
You could. We wouldn't recommend it. For example, you could have a situation where the settler and the trustee may be both involved in a car accident, at which point, although the trust wouldn't fail, a trustee could be appointed. It makes it a longer, lengthier process, and it undermines, I think, the reason for setting the trust up a little bit. It delays the process of payment. So we'd always recommend at least 2 additional trustees. That just gives you sort of a spare trustee.
Okay, makes sense. And as I say, we've got 3 trustees, so we'll pop those ones in there, the names and the addresses. And if we move down to page 9, this says attestation, and it looks like this is where we need to capture some dates and some signatures. So just talk us through this, Mark.
The date we're looking for there is just the date the last trustee signed this trust. So it's effectively the date that the trust comes into force for the policy.
So effectively, once the settler has signed and all of the trustees have signed, that's when we'd need to capture a date in there to actually set the trust up. Okay, and as far as signatures, now I think you've got quite a quirky little unique selling point here with this trust form, Mark. In terms of the signatures, it says here, you must sign here as settler or settlers, because we did talk about the fact this will cater for joint life policies as well as single life policies, either by typing in your name or using a ballpoint pen. So obviously wet signatures will be accepted, but it also allows for typed signatures too.
Yes, the settler and the trustees both need to sign this form. This can be completed electronically if required. The settler types their full name into the appropriate boxes and then emails the form to each of the trustees for electronic signature. There's also an option at this point. You can alternatively print it and send it to the trustees for a wet signature. So to be honest with you, whichever method you choose.
So effectively, we could actually complete this whole thing online. We wouldn't need to necessarily print the whole thing off. And I notice as well that there doesn't seem to be an area for witness signatures, Mark.
That's right. No, we don't require witness signatures.
Okay, so that looks like we've done everything that we need to do. And if we look at page 10 onwards, what we see here is lots of the rules and the important notes. Now, there's an important note here about 30-day survivorship. So I think that's talking about joint life policy. So just talk us through that, Mark.
Yes, it is. It is joint life policies. There's a survivorship clause included as standard in this discretionary trust. So what that means is that if any claims proceeds are paid from the policy, they're held for the surviving settler, the life assured, as long as they survive 30 days.
Right. So the good thing to note about that is that what you would typically see with other life companies is that for any kind of joint life situation, you'd usually need a different type of trust form, usually called a survivorship trust. But with the Aegon discretionary trust, you can actually see that that's catered for within this trust form here. So that's really good to note. I think the other thing just to ask the question about, Mark, is terminal illness benefit, because we do see differences between the providers about how they deal with TIB. So what's the Aegon stance?
Well, the way we approach this is our trust places only the benefits that become payable on death or terminal illness into trust for the beneficiaries. So that means things like retained benefits that could comprise critical illness and typically it'd be total permanent disability. Those are payable to the settler.
Okay, so just to clarify, that means that if you've got a life policy with Aegon and it includes terminal illness benefit and you write it into trust, then that terminal illness benefit is gifted away. So there isn't the option, because we didn't see it on the trust form there isn't the option to retain that benefit back. And I think that makes a lot of sense, Mark, because of the fact that you can never know how much somebody's going to be worth in the future. You don't know when they're going to die, and you don't know whether you're going to be causing an inheritance tax charge by having that terminal illness paid back to the settler. So you've kind of taken that decision away, which actually makes a bit of common sense. So if we work our way down the form, again, there's more rules and bits and pieces there, but there's nothing more to complete, which is really good. And I guess the final thing we would need to do when we've gone through the trust form is go back to page number 9, because that's the date there where we would need to insert that date to set the trust up. So once everybody's signed the form and we've got it back, that's the date that we would need to enter in. And it says this should be the date on which the last person signed or typed their name. So job done, sorted. And let's just remind ourselves about what to do with the trust form. So if we go back to page number 7, you can see there's 3 different routes of travel to actually get the copy of the trust form into Aegon. So really simple. I think that could really speed up the process of actually writing more protection policies into trust by simple virtue of the fact that you can do a lot of this on the computer and you can do it electronically. So that's great. Thanks very much, Mark, for walking us through that. Really simple and really effortless. Thanks for watching the podcast. I hope you found it useful. And until next time, it's bye for now.